Hi guys. So here I am in my new office slash studio at West Hall High School. We are in on it's Thursday of our first week of the second semester, and we're virtual. So all of you guys are at home, and here I am. Hopefully you've been watching all the videos about what we've been doing as far as your assignments and stuff like that that Miss Starlin and I are having a really good time making for you guys together. But one of the other things that's going on with us doing this tab classroom is the fact that we're supposed to be demoing what it means to be an artist and the whole art making process. So that's one of the things that is going to be an added feature for you guys for this semester. So I'm going to be recording these videos. I'm using WeVideo, which is something Hall County has option for us, and I've played with a little bit already, so it allows me to do some editing and stuff. So instead of you having to sit here and watch me paint a background, which is what I'm planning on doing today, for 30 minutes and it being really boring, I can talk to you a little bit, then I can go over there and do that, then I can come back and edit, and we time lapse it, and you get to see a lot more in a shorter amount of time. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing. So what I'm going to be showing you guys as we go through these series of videos is, from my end, is how to create a series, because I had an idea over while we were out for the winter break, and I was spending some time with my family, and we lost one of my relatives. And I come from a very, very big Southern family. And the last few times I've seen some of my cousins, it has been at funerals. Over the last year, we've had a few of our, the older members of our family that we've lost. And we were talking at this last funeral right before the Christmas that our family just seems to be getting smaller and smaller. And that put me to thinking about, how much of the stories that we've been told growing up and the memories of, our relatives or our ancestors are going to be lost because there's nobody left to pass that information on. And then I got to thinking about how I always tell you guys, our job as artists is to document our now. We're supposed to visually document in this world, in this society, what is important to us. And my family is very, very important to me, especially with a lot of the history that goes into my family. So I started digging through some of my ancestry stuff, and there's some of the things I already knew that I will tell y'all stories as we go through this. So not only are y'all going to see me work on artwork, you're going to hear stories about my family too, which is really cool. So I started doing some digging for some of these stories. I have tons of old black and white photographs that I got from my grandmother before she passed away. And so I got to thinking about how it would be cool to take those old, you see old photographs, they're usually kind of tiny. Take those old photographs, make giant paintings out of those, but not just do the painting, like do something that's more symbolic in them. So what my plan is, the idea I've had is that I'm going to do these paintings of these old photographs of different members of my family. And with each one of the paintings, I'm thinking, now remember, I told you one of the things you got to do with tab is you're going to be doing some risk taking and experimenting and trying some things and research. So I'm thinking I'm going to do the whole old painting or the old photo painting in black and white acrylic on these really large canvases and make it look just like the photo. So if the photo has tears or scratches or whatever in it, I'm going to paint those into the painting. So it still looks like that. But then overlay it with something symbolic that reminds me of that family member or matches the stories of that family member. So like my great grandmother was half Cherokee. The reason I have the Cherokee rose on my arm is for that same reason. So I'm thinking Cherokee rose is overlaid over my great grandmother. My grandfather was like this just very stoic, solid person. And there's this giant oak tree that's on his property that we climbed all in. So I'm thinking oak trees and acorns and things like that for my grandfather. So that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of research and planning and all that's going to go into that side of it. So I'll figure all that out. But the material wise, in my brain, what I want to do is do the painting on top of the black and white in full color in oil paint. Now, if you know anything about oil paint has a tendency to crack over time. So I'm thinking if I start laying oil paint on top of acrylic, so I'm going to have to deal with cracking. And then I thought, well, now they make water-based oil paints. Maybe those won't crack as bad on top of the acrylic as traditional oil paints would. And then I got to talking to Miss Starlin about it. And she's like, it's old photographs and there's cracks and scratches and all in the old photographs. So is it really that big a deal if the oil paint does crack, or will it add to it? So all of these are thoughts that I've got that I'm going to be experimenting with as I go through this. So I'm going to start this painting here, but then as I'm working on this, I have some smaller canvases that I'm going to be experimenting with the mediums with as well. So I'll be sharing that kind of stuff with you also. So as you can see already, when you start planning something like this, there's a lot of different moving pieces. There's a lot of thoughts that go into it. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, I have a lot of old photographs. This is 3 of the old photographs that I have here. I don't know how well you can see them. I'll take them out the frame later. But this here, whoops, nope, backwards, this is my great-grandfather sitting on a tree stump outside their old house in Puller, which is now where the Savannah International Airport is. Lots of fun stories about that you'll hear as we go through this. This over here is a photo of my grandfather right before he left for World War II, along with his dad. And so we're going to talk about him. His brother was actually killed at the Battle of the Bulge during World War II. And then this is my dad. Whoops, there we go. That's my dad when he was a little boy on my grandfather's tractor, because my family have always owned farms and had a lot of farmland. So anyway, this is the painting I'm actually going to start with. So we'll start working on this eventually. So we're going to do some stuff with it. But for today, what I want to do is I want to actually just paint a background on this large canvas. So now what's interesting about this, and one of the things you guys are going to learn as you're going through and working on your tab process, is that every artist works slightly different. So some artists will start with an underpainting or a background painting. Some artists will just sketch it all out and jump right in. Even if you do a background painting or underpainting, some artists do it differently than others. Some will do long, straight strokes, side-to-side strokes. None of these are wrong. It all just depends on what you get comfortable with and what is your style. That's why we do tabs. So you can experiment this. You don't have to do everything the exact same way I do it. But I'm going to talk you through how I do things. And then some of you might want to try that. Some of you might decide you want to watch YouTube videos from somebody else and try something completely different. That's the thing. This is all you do what you want to do. So for today, what I want to do is I want to start just trying to cover the background of this canvas here. So I am going to use just a paper plate. That's all, because I want to be able to use a large brush. So I have these large house brushes. A lot of you that have been in the classroom have used them to put gesso and stuff on. So that's kind of the same thing I'm going to do here. One of the things you're going to hear me talk to you guys about too a lot while we're working on this is making sure that you take care of your materials and your supplies. Simply because if you decide to go to art school by some chance, it is probably one of the most expensive degrees you can get, simply because art materials are so expensive. So you learn very quickly how to take care of your stuff, how to wash your brushes, how to make sure you close things up. As an art teacher, that's one of the reasons we get so frustrated with some of you guys that do not take care of your stuff like you're supposed to, because we've been through art school. We've been making art long enough that we realize that you don't want to have to keep replacing all these things. So since I am going to be doing this as a black and white painting, I'm just going to put a little bit of black acrylic and a little bit of white acrylic on this plate. As I said, different people do things different ways. So some people would actually go ahead and mix their grays here. I don't want a flat gray, even though the photograph has a very, very flat, neutral, even gray in the background. That's not what I want, because I am going to still make this a painting in my style. So all I'm using is Dick Blick. You can actually, they're out of Atlanta. So Blick acrylics are really good. So I put some black and some white on this plate. I'm keeping them separated. And all I'm going to do is start covering my background. Now, like I said, some people will go completely in one direction. They'll just go straight up and down or straight side to side. If you've ever watched Bob Ross do his paintings, because he's doing landscapes, a lot of his stuff just goes this way. If you've never watched Bob Ross paint, you totally should, especially if you have trouble sleeping at night. He is so relaxing. his voice will just put you in its own kind of little Zen trance. So super fun guy to watch. And if you've ever done any of like like guided paintings, like where you go to the different little groups and stuff like that, and they tell you how to paint a cow or paint a Christmas scene or whatever. If you've ever done any of that kind of stuff, you can do it yourself just by watching a Bob Ross painting. So this is where I said that I'm going to take some time and just time lapse. So I'm going to just keep painting, stop talking, and then I will pick back up once I get this covered and talk to you guys a little bit more. Okay? Okay. So pretty much what I have here now looks a lot like just, the backgrounds that you have whenever you have your school pictures made, your portraits made at when you're doing school photos. It's kind of what it looks like. It's just all different levels of gray. I didn't actually mix any grays. I just used straight. Oh, I got it on my diploma. I used straight black, straight white, and then just kind of let them blend and mix themselves. So I have some areas that are darker, some areas that are lighter. When you're doing a project like this, maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you want something that's smooth and like all of them are the same values. That's just a personal preference, and this is just my style. This is more like what I like to go for. So you've got the different kind of textured patterns and stuff going on in the background. So it took me a little while to do this, not too terribly long, but it did take a few minutes. One of the things that I could have done if I wanted to, and you'll see me do it later on in the process, is since I am working with acrylic, if you've ever worked with acrylic before, you know that acrylic dries really, really fast. And so therefore, if you're going to do any kind of blending or once you start, you kind of have to keep going because once it's dry, it's not really going to blend anymore. Well, they make a acrylic medium that you can mix into your acrylics or an extender that will keep your acrylics from drying out quite so fast, which then in turn makes them work a little bit more like oil paints. I'll end up using those whenever I start working on my figure and stuff like that. For the background, though, I wanted the texture. I wanted it to dry in some areas and then overlay it with other colors so that I got those different values in there from working with these paints. So I didn't use that, but then at the same time, since it is such a large canvas, and I was working with straight acrylic, notice how I kept kind of rotating it? It's because when I started at the top, by the time I got to the bottom and I wanted to go back up and blend it back in again, that area was completely dry. And so it's better if you just kind of rotate as you're moving through it. So that's one of those things that if you were doing this and experimenting with and you've never done it before, that you would learn. Now, that's part of your tab process. That's part of teaching artistic behaviors is that experimentation and figuring out what's going to happen when you do one thing and then what do you need to do to compensate for that to make it do like you want to. Another thing that I strongly advise, especially if you're painting, and really if you're painting with large things, this is my SCAD apron. We're an apron because notice how I had to keep reaching up on it. I did pretty good today, but you're going to end up with paint on you. You're going to end up like pushing yourself into the paint. So wear yourself an apron. But yeah, so now we have this. This is actually, I don't know if you can tell it from here because it's across the thing, but that is 3 foot wide by 4 feet tall. It's 36 by 48 canvas that I'm working with here. So now that I have this part done, I'm going to let this dry overnight. And then my plan tomorrow is to kind of start sketching out the figure and all this stuff on the back of it. And then maybe start doing a little underpainting depending on how tomorrow goes. So one of the big things that's going to be important with you, especially is important regardless, but especially if you're working from home, is setting yourself a schedule or setting yourself a plan or a process of when you're going to work on your arts. So one of the things that I do is I make these little, in my calendar, I make these little sticky notes that are my to-do list for each and every day. And what I have done is actually after talking with one of the students today that was talking about having trouble at home, originally my plan was to come in every morning and work on computer stuff, work on, like your grades and your assignments and your lessons and stuff like that until lunch, take a lunch break. And then after lunch to work on my artwork. But then what was happening is I was getting so bogged down into doing things was not working on my art like I needed to. So my new goal after talking to Rain today, thank you, Rain, for the inspiration, was complete 3 things on my to-do list. So once I've completed 3 things on my to-do list, today I graded the people who had submitted already. Miss Darlin and I recorded all of the videos for your tab lesson for next week. And then I had to write a recommendation for a past student of mine from Peachtree Ridge High School. So once I'd done those 3 things, then I was able to start working on my painting, which then in turn means I start working on videos for you because I'm recording every step of this with it. So once I've done my 3 things, then I can work on my own art. And so that's where these videos are going to come in. Some days I'll work on the paintings. And so I'm going to have a playlist on YouTube that's all just working on this painting series. Some days I may be working in my visual arts journal on plans for the paintings or on something completely different. Who knows? But I'll record those too. I actually now have this really cool document camera. So I can get better recordings of working in my journal. Miss Starlin has one of those too. So she's going to be posting videos as well of her working on her process. So I'm hoping that you being able to see us work on our artwork is going to inspire you guys and give you some directions on how to pursue making your own artwork. So step 1, we have painting the background of our canvas. Anyway, so thank you guys for listening, for joining me. Shoot me an email, shoot me comments, whatever. And I am looking forward to doing a whole lot more of these videos with you guys. Okay, thanks. See you later.